Welcome to Young Female Entrepreneurs. We do a live stream every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 Eastern Time, and it was showing Jenny. Okay, so as I was just explaining to our guest, this is our fourth time doing the live stream for YFE. Yes, this is a nice, the Oval Eye TV studio. We use this, we've been doing this for a year now, but we still have little routines to work through when it comes to the YFE live stream. But anyway, you're watching Young Female Entrepreneurs. It's part of youngfemaleentrepreneurs.com. Every Thursday night here, we do a live chat over on Facebook. I am on the Facebook chat, so if you have questions for our guest, who I'll be introducing later on, it's Jenny Dibble. You're more than welcome to ask away over on the chat, add comments, and meet other young female entrepreneurs that are present watching the live stream. You may also be watching this the next day over on iTunes, Blip TV, YouTube, or on youngfemaleentrepreneurs.com. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you'll be able to leave at the end of the day or at the end of this video feeling like you understand what it means to sell your business or to have an exit strategy, really. Doesn't necessarily mean that that exit is going to be selling your business. It could be whatever you want it to look like. But we're going to be talking to Jenny Dibble, who is now a partner at Traffic PRM. But she's going to bring in some interesting perspective as far as she had a business to begin with, sold it, and is now onto this new company where it's fairly recent. So it fits within our YFE profile series where we've been looking at women that have been in business for 1 to 2 years or so. We've featured Nyla Blades so far. Also pageant professors, which is a fantastic group of women. There's 4 of them across the country where they do videos for pageants, pageant girls, pageant women, to teach them to be the best in their pageantry. And then last week we had a fantastic profile. If you haven't watched it yet, go over to youngfemaleentrepreneurs.com. It was on Granny Cart Productions. It's 2 women that met at Columbia University grad school and got together and formed a company after knowing each other for a year. It's a really fantastic story, and along with that profile, Ryan Paugh came on beforehand of the YEC and told us a little bit about Fix Young America. So again, all of that information is over at youngfemaleentrepreneurs.com. You can find it by looking under profiles. So again, tonight, Jenny Dibble will come on in a few minutes. Before we get started, though, I wanted to remind you that over on thecravecompany.com, if you're not familiar with Crave yet, they're a company that was founded by Melody Behringer, someone I'm a huge fan of. She's an author. She wrote Startup Junkie. She's had 30 or so odd businesses over the last 20 years, I believe. We interviewed her for an Oval Eye TV episode where my mom and Carissa interviewed her. It was a fantastic interview. But anyway, Crave was founded by Melody Behringer, and it's to support women across the world in growing their businesses and also letting other people know about their businesses, which is always needed. They have the Crave books. I'm sure a lot of you have seen them out there. But Crave has events that are happening across the United States and in Canada in the next week that are coffee chats. And I think it's fairly inexpensive. It's like $25, and you meet some of the most fantastic women. And I'm going to be on a panel next week. If you're in the Seattle area, it's all about women and competition. And it's been interesting. I've read a few articles lately on, are women more inclined to compete, or are we more inclined to collaborate? And on today's YFE chat, VU Society, Rachel, she brought up some really interesting points. She's one of the women that's going to be profiled in the next few weeks or so. But she brought up some points in that women, we need to stop competing and do a little bit more collaborating. But she brought in a fun twist on it, that just a little bit collaborating and a little bit competition. So don't forget about the competitive side, which I think is always needed. So anyway, check it out, thecravecompany.com. Like I said, they've got coffee chats across the United States that should be some fun mixing and mingling with women entrepreneurs. So, without further ado, I want to introduce our guest, Jenny Dibble. Jenny Dibble is a self-proclaimed serial entrepreneur who launched her first design business at the age of 13 after getting internet out on her Missouri farm. After growing up a bit, getting married, and moving across the country, she started an online marketing agency, later expanding it to license the model to 97 locations before selling the business. She's a wife, mom, and new business owner once again after joining Traffic PRM as a partner. Jenny, thank you so much for being on the show. Welcome.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, to get started, why don't you tell us a little bit? I know I did like a quick, brief introduction of who you are, but why don't you fill in the blanks there?
Sure. So, yeah, you're right. I did start my first business whenever I was in the seventh grade because I was a little bit of a geek and liked coding, which is funny how you grow up and that is such an amazing asset to have. But at the time, you can start your own business, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So I started my career in the healthcare recruiting world doing online marketing for a small healthcare recruiting company here in St. Louis. Moved out to Seattle with my husband, and as I began applying for positions out there to go work a job for someone, I had a bunch of consulting requests come in as a result of all of the speaking that I had done in the recruiting industry. So my first business really happened by accident, and then it kept growing by accident. So it certainly wasn't skill when I launched the first one, but I sure learned a lot. So I am now a mother to a very, very sweet 2-year-old little boy. And as you said, I'm now partner to a online marketing and PR company called Traffic PRM, which I'm having an absolute blast doing. And I don't know if you've mentioned, but I'm in St. Louis is the geographical location. Yeah.
I did not mention that, but yeah, so Jenny and I have a nice history. It's not a very long history. I feel like I've known you for a very long time, but really we just met a couple of years ago, right? A few years ago? 2 years ago?
I think we're kindred spirits, Jen. That's why it feels like it's been much longer. I think it was actually back in 2009 that we met, so I think it has been 3 years.
It was in 2009 because I met you after I was done coaching the drill team.
Yes.
So that was 2009, which was 2 years after I graduated from college. But anyway, very cool. So you talked a little bit about what prompted you to start that first business. The first business was called Search Market Me. Now, what actually kicked you off? Because you said it was very organic and getting it started. What was the final kick in the pants kind of a thing that said, yes, I'm going to launch the business today?
I had 3 people call or email me in 1 week asking me to do consulting with pretty nice dollar amounts associated with each of them. And at that point, I couldn't get that doing a job because I was really young at the time. I had 5 years of work experience under my belt, but I worked full time for the first 3 years or the last 3 years I was in college. So I was still in my really early 20s. And so going out and getting a job, I'd be paid much less than I would do with the consulting offers I already had on my plate. So it was really not even a question that I would do it at that point.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, did you graduate? What year did you graduate from college?
Are you going to age me up or down?
Sorry.
It's okay. 2006.
Okay. See, I graduated in 2007, and I also looked for a job right after school, and I didn't look very long before joining Ovali, but no one was hiring at the time. The economy was starting to plummet, and that was kind of like doomsday and right when I graduated. So anyway, it was interesting that you kind of had the same path.
Yeah, and it's funny too because whenever I was doing Search Market Me, I had my base level of clients, and at that point I committed to it and said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And so we started growing and kept marketing myself at that point. It was, do or die. If I'm going to do it, I'm going all in. So I began marketing myself, landing more clients, and then all of a sudden the economy collapsed, and I was watching everything on the news, and I finally just turned off the news and I stopped watching it, and it made me very uninformed, but my business was thriving, and so I couldn't have all of that negativity telling me the bad things that were happening out in the world, because if I, in my head knew that I was killing it, it was actually coming to life. So I just stayed in my own little world and kept killing it with my business and didn't let the outside factors ever come in and impact me. And it worked.
Yeah, you hear that from a lot of successful women entrepreneurs, that you really can't, you should stay informed, but not let it get to the point where it's all consuming, and that it's turning the way that you think about things into that kind of dark cloud. So can you talk a little bit about what Search Market Me did at the very beginning and how that fit into your larger vision for the company?
Sure. So what we did is we served as an extension of the company. So we served as their online marketing department. So my base clients that I brought on, all three of them were healthcare recruiting companies. So they were solo practitioners or partners that had no marketing department. And they wanted myself and then eventually my team to do all of their online marketing. So we did their website, their search marketing, their social media marketing, which was just starting. That makes me feel old. Their email marketing. We handled everything as though we were an extension of their business, and it really was a true partnership in the way that we interacted on a daily basis. So they saved a lot of money versus hiring a big in-house team, and we made a lot of money versus just offering one or two of the services. So whenever I started Search Market Me, I had this grand vision of having it be a lifestyle business. So I'm sure a lot of people have read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. And so I was fresh off of reading that and thought, oh, this is awesome. I'll set up all of these processes. I'll go be on the beach all of the time. And that's really not me. That was my first taste of finding out that I'm not happy unless I'm super busy and really engaged and passionate about something I'm working on. And so I ended up really twisting that vision as it went along. And I just heard my husband laugh in the background because he knows how true that is. Thanks, honey. But it is, I have to constantly be engaged with something. And so the very beginning idea of what I thought Search Market Me was going to be, it ended up being something completely different, but in such a better way.
Very cool. So, when you said that it was going to be something completely different in such a better way, talk about what that bigger vision was, what actually eventually ended up happening.
Sure. So the company kept growing and growing and growing, and it got to the point that I had 11 full-time employees in a location outside of Seattle. And then I had entrepreneurs asking me how I did it. So I began training them at no cost. I would just train them. I love teaching online marketing. So I began doing courses about online marketing and how to do it, and as far as fulfillment, but then also kind of mentoring them about how to start a business, because most of them were in the marketing field, but it was more from an executive perspective. And then they all started being successful. So then I thought, wait a minute, I think I could market this, and I did, and it worked really well. And as you said, we did 97 locations in about a year and a half. So it was extremely profitable, and it's something that I'm very, very proud of.
Okay, but you did it a little bit differently, just for those that are watching. You didn't sell what's, I think, a little bit more common is that you sell an ebook or something like that, or even group coaching and teach what you've done to others, but you did more of a licensing type model. Can you talk really quickly about that?
Yeah, sure. So typically people are familiar if you're going to do something at a high price point with a franchise, in which case they have to keep your branding and they have to execute your business model to the letter. Well, I wanted to do something slightly different because I knew all of these entrepreneurs wanted to be able to have the power over their branding and to be able to modify their business as they saw fit based on their customer base. So I did what the legal structure is called a business opportunity. And the buy-in price point was anywhere from $18,900 to $24,900 one-time fee. So it was very, very big price points. But if you look at the larger franchising model, many franchises cost hundreds of thousands of dollars just for the franchise fee, let alone the startup costs. So for people in that buying mode, my program looked relatively inexpensive, and it really worked out well for all of us because they ended up being overserviced by me, who wanted to make sure every one of my little chickens was successful, versus what they would with a franchise where they help you, but at the end you're really just a number. So that's how the model was different.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. Now, you talked about 11 employees earlier. When did you feel like this is the time I need to hire an employee? Was there something that happened, or was it just kind of like, at this time I'm going to do it? Was it something that you planned, or was it just something that kind of developed?
It was always something that I planned, because again, 4-hour work week, how can you do it if you don't have people doing the work for you? Right. But the catalyst for it was, I think it was my 5th client. And at that point, the amount of copywriting that had to be done and copy editing was so overwhelming. And writing, I can write, but having to write every single day isn't my strong suit. I am the personality type that I'm much more of a strategist versus having to sit down and execute day after day after day. And so the copywriting was just killing my soul. So that is the first hire that I made was a copywriter, and she came in and took over all of the writing responsibilities, and I continued doing the strategy and more of the technical execution. And it was the best decision I made because then I had more time for sales, and then it fed into this beautiful process that allowed me to keep hiring and keep selling and just keep growing.
Very cool. Yeah, I hear a lot of people talking about getting help, and that was the topic of our YFE chat today, actually, was on getting help. And a lot of people that are in online marketing, I feel like their first inclination is to go to contractors. So contract out the work to other freelancers or independent contractors. And so it's interesting that you took that different approach where you're saying instead of going out and giving them referrals, basically, I'm going to instead hire them. And they're going to work for me.
Well, yeah. Well, I always knew, too, that at some point I would want to sell the business. And so if you always use freelancers or contractors, then what assets do you have to sell? None. You have a relationship, and other people can develop that same relationship. So in order to sell down the road, and I really thought it would be many, many more years down the road, like 10 years down the road instead of 3, I knew that I needed to have the employees and I needed to have the processes and the documentation so they would have a lot of assets to purchase versus just a client base. So it would increase the purchase price pretty drastically.
Right. And just so you know, if you're watching on Facebook, and again, if you're just tuning in now, every Thursdays at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern, and we're talking to Jenny Dibble of Traffic PRM. She started a business, sold it, and is now on to her second business, which is fairly new. And so just quickly to let you know, to save on bandwidth, to make sure that the Skype connection comes through as clear as possible, I've turned the chat off. So I apologize if you guys are asking questions. Thank you so much for coming, but I want to make sure that Jenny's answers get through clearly. So you were talking about the fact that you were thinking of selling the business a long ways off. And I feel like in just the time that I knew you, things happened very quickly for you. So can you talk about some of the big wins? Because I feel like when you won, you had really big wins, and maybe some of the failures. Failures is a big deal right now, especially for young entrepreneurs, and learning from our mistakes and sharing with others versus feeling, upset about them or embarrassed or whatever it is. So maybe if you could share a few of your wins and your...
Sure.
I don't want to call them failures, but...
They're not failures. They're not failures.
They're learning opportunities.
Exactly. Okay, so so as I said, whenever the price point that I dealt with, whenever you have a win, it is a big win. It is super exciting. So they're always the financial wins, but I'd say my biggest win with Search Market Me was the fulfillment and the lives that I changed. And I know, oh, that sounds so nice, but it really is. Even to this day, I'm still in touch with many of the agency owners that I helped launch their business, and many of them, or the vast majority, would not have even gone into this industry if it were not for me. And now several of them have million or multi-million-dollar businesses. One of them contacted me because he has an offer for an acquisition on his business now, just 2 years into running it. And many more of them now have the lifestyle that they want, where they're traveling regularly with a spouse who travels, or some of them are young and still single, so they're using that time to now travel. And it is just so fulfilling to me. And so I'd say that would be my biggest win. Other wins would be the employees that I hired, giving them the experience that now, looking at where they are in their career, I know that I gave them that first little stepping stone into the industry. And so that too is kind of a feel-good, fulfilling thing, knowing that you impacted their lives in such a great way. For failures, I would say I am so stubborn that I never think that I fail. And my husband can attest to this if he were to come in here. But no matter how bad things are, either in my business, if I have a really bad week, or in my personal life, if something bad happens, I always have a way of looking at it to say, okay, everything is a cycle and everything is short term, and this is just a down period, but it's not a failure. It's a learning experience. And then, how can I turn this into an opportunity and quickly try to turn that around and find the silver lining? And I know that sounds so cliche, but that's how I've always been. And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm successful, is because I'm so bullheaded about never even letting it enter my mind that I could not be successful.
No, that makes sense. I mean, a lot of at Oval we read a lot of business books, and a lot of the people on the walls, I feel like, have the same mentality, where you really have to focus on what's next and look at it, like you said, as it's just one cycle and it's going to move into something else. So So really interesting. The same time that I was meeting you, you were expanding your business into that next level that you were talking about, where you're licensing out. And I swear, it was like the month that I think you signed the lease on your offices, was the same time I went on a hike with you. And and Julie, one of the other YFEs at the time, we were walking down to the falls, and Jenny turns to everyone and says, "I'm pregnant." And it was funny because I was also trying to get pregnant at the time, and you got pregnant, and then and Julie, I think, was like, "We just signed the lease on the office. What's going on?" So was that something that you had prepared for? I mean,
yes.
What was going through your mind?
I'm type A. It was planned. Yeah. I'm so meticulous in everything in my life. So I never, ever want to put my career ahead of my family, ever. And I knew that I was in my mid to late 20s. And I want to have, at the time, I wanted to have kind of a larger family. And so I didn't want to wait until I was in my 30s to get started. And there's always time to have a career. And I, at the time, felt, I'm a superwoman. I can do it all. I can put a little bassinet in my office, and I can work while my baby's there all day. And maybe my assistant can take the baby and, I don't know, go for a walk while I'm on a phone call or something. It's easy,
yeah.
Right? Everybody thinks that before they have a baby.
Yeah.
So it was completely planned, and we were really, really excited about it. But what we didn't plan for is that my son arrived at 27 weeks. So I thought I had 3.5 more months to get ready and get the office in line, be able to take maybe 3 weeks of a maternity leave, not totally shutting off, of course, but at least just checking email, maybe not going into the office. But then Owen arrived very suddenly. I went in for an appointment, and the next thing we were rushed off and had an emergency cesarean, and I had a baby in the NICU for 3 months. Over 3 months, I ran the business out of the neonatal intensive care unit, which was very, very difficult. And it was really, I'm sure you'll ask about this later, but that was really one of the catalysts of why I sold the business when I did, because it really did just start to become a little bit too much because of that.
Yeah, it's another Jenny-ism. Again, I hadn't known her that long, and I remember one of our mutual friends, Megan Thomas. Shout out to Megan. Absolutely adore her. She's at 425mom.com, I believe is her domain. Yeah. But anyway, we were sitting in my living room having wine, and she got a phone call from Jenny's husband. And Jenny's husband, because Megan was working for you at the time, and Jenny's husband was saying, she's in, I think you were doing the C-section then or something like that, and he was letting Megan know that you weren't going to be coming into the office or something. I don't know what it was.
Next day,
yeah,
I had a meeting that evening that she had to call and cancel.
It's nutty.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Craziness.
Yeah, totally ridiculous.
It's funny because a lot of the women that I profile, some of the questions I'll ask, well, one of the questions specifically is about family planning, and I always feel kind of intrusive about asking about that, but it's so important. I think a lot of women either are putting it off, like Sheryl Sandberg. She's famously quoted in the TED Talk and a few other speeches that she gives, and saying that women have an issue where they plan too far ahead, and they say, I'm going to be having a baby in the next 3 years, and so they plan their career out, and they kind of hit the glass ceiling that's self-imposed, basically. And as young female entrepreneurs, I feel like sometimes we do that too. Not even in the corporate ladder type of a deal. We could have full control over what we do, but yet we're planning for, in 3 years I might have a baby then, kind of a thing. Yeah. And I took a very similar mentality where I was just kind of like, you know what, I want to have a baby, and I have a business, and those two things are going to figure itself out. So
exactly. And there really is no good time to have a baby when you have a business. There's no good time. All of a sudden your business isn't going to say, oh, you could put me on hold for a month. There's no such thing like that. So if you want a baby, you have to have a baby. You can't just wait and wait and wait, or else you'll end up being 60 and never have had children.
Yes, it makes life that much more interesting. So when your son brings home little bugs from daycare, then the entire family gets sick and he doesn't go to school and you're trying to run such a mess.
And you have a webinar you're supposed to be leading and you keep coughing because he gave you something.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Oh, glorious.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you talked a little bit about when you knew the right time it was to sell your business, but for you it was specifically very unique because your son was in the NICU and it was just kind of a stress that was mounting up on top of it. But for the broader sense of people that are watching, as far as an exit strategy, do you have any advice for them as far as signs to look out for?
Yeah, sure. And actually, so my son was born in January 2010. I didn't actually sell my business until January 2011. So it was a whole year. But that, for me, was the catalyst of, in my mind, saying, I'm ready. I'm going to be ready. This isn't working. I had so much emotional stress that was built up from those 3 months in the NICU that I think I never fully recovered. And so I was always on the lookout and saying, okay, if somebody did approach me for M&A, then I probably would start paying attention and have a conversation. Whereas before my son's birth, I never would have entertained it because I would always know I could take it the next level and get a lot more money for it. So for me, it was the right time because I was approached by a gentleman who had a group of investors, or a business rather, who was led by a wonderful CEO who's now the CEO of Search Market Me. And he had a great group of investors that was interested in buying me out. And it was right not only for me personally, because I knew it was time for me to step back and turn my life down a couple of notches and press pause for a bit, but also for the network. Because again, all of the agency owners that started a business with me, I really did feel like they were part of my family, and I didn't want to just sell it to some big no-name corporation and have them walk away. So I knew that the person that would be the new CEO had a little bit more business experience than I did, to be honest with you, and had experience in building businesses to a little bit of a higher level, or managing businesses at a little bit higher level. And quite a few of the agency owners were getting to that point. So I knew that, he would be able to offer the network a lot of things that at this point I couldn't. So it was a win-win for both myself and the network. And then they presented an offer. And for people out there, I would say if you think that you're ever going to be interested in entertaining a merger or acquisition, you should definitely build things in from the day that you start your business and document everything, all of your processes, develop things that are really unique, that are part of the assets that you can sell. Make sure that all of your legal documents are up to date and correct. Work with an attorney and have them formalize everything in your business. Make sure all of your business insurance paperwork and policies are up to date. All of those small things that you can kind of neglect when you're a busy entrepreneur, but whenever an outside party and really a group of investors come to look at your business, if you don't have all of those things in order, then they either will not be interested in entertaining an offer, or you'll get a much smaller offer because you didn't have everything organized. So start now, because it's much easier to start, as I did at the very beginning, and planning that way versus trying to backtrack after you've run the business for multiple years.
No, I think this is a really interesting point, though, for women that are starting more of the consultant type business. So if you're in online marketing or whatever it is, bookkeeping, it's interesting to consider this. It's an interesting thing to table, I guess, as far as making sure that you've thought of your exit strategy, because a lot of millennials, they're saying that we're more likely to switch jobs, keep the more project-based type work. Like Seth Godin, I'm sure you've heard him speak on it, that young people today, we're going to be bouncing from job to job, basically. And Erin of Well in LA, who I absolutely adore,
I do too.
If you're
She's
not
great.
following her on Facebook yet, you definitely need to, because she's like a burst of sunshine whenever she shows up. But anyway, she says in her YFE profile that I believe is next week on next Thursdays, she says that, you know, you should always remember that this is just your first business. You're young. Who knows what you're going to do next? And I think that we can see that in a lot of things. Is it Eye Contact, I think, is an email marketing system that was recently sold by a young entrepreneur, famously young entrepreneurs, written books on the topic. So it's an important thing to remember that your business is your business today, but is it going to be your business 2 years from now? Kind of a thing.
Yep.
So anyway,
Yep.
That was my little rant on that.
And it's fun because they can become, as an entrepreneur, you can become so emotionally attached to your business that you think, oh, I'll never sell it. When in reality, as a person, individual, you go through stages too. So right now you love your business, but 3-5 years from now, you're potentially going to be a completely different person, and that business may not be the right fit for you anymore. So you need to build in all the things to make your exit strategy fall into place more easily so you can move on to your next passion and not be stuck in something that isn't really you anymore.
Right. Good points. I like it. Okay, so moving on to the next question, having to deal with a more personal side. So if you've watched YFE profiles in the past, YFE likes to deal with the business piece of our lives as young female entrepreneurs, but also more of the personal side, the relationships, cocktails, all sorts of fun stuff. But so as far as you're married, you have a son, what has your husband thought about all of this fun transitions that you've kind of pulled him through?
He is very supportive. He also thinks I'm slightly crazy. He's the stable one out of the two of us. He has an amazing job, and he is doing very, very well at it. He's been with the same company since college and is thriving there. So to see me being entrepreneurial and going out and taking risks, we're kind of the yin and the yang in the relationship. But while he'll always say he's very proud of me, he also does say he checks for me every once in a while, because again, I am a Uber enthusiast. So sometimes I'll be telling him a story and he'll say, wait a minute, sanity check. Let's talk for a minute. let's go through the details. Let's run through that contract. Let me review it again. Not so much now that I have a business partner, but whenever it was myself doing everything with Search Market Me, he was very, very important in that process. And he always is. So it's always great to have a business partner. And he does contracts. He works for Boeing, and he does contracts and project management for them. So to have somebody who does contracts for a living, look at your contracts really for free can be kind of helpful. So
that is nice. Yeah,
he thinks I'm crazy.
Well, a few women in the chat today were saying that their husbands do IT or web design, and that they've been able to pull them in on their websites. And I mean, imagine how much money you saved on starting your business.
I know.
If you had someone doing
that would be amazing.
Yeah, and having someone for contracts, my goodness, that would be fantastic. But I can definitely attest to that. Rory is hugely supportive of what you do, and he's a great guy. So, good job.
Thank you.
Good job on that one. Okay, so after you sold the business, now I met you in Seattle because I'm out of the Seattle area. You, like I mentioned, she started her first business when she got the internet out in her Missouri farm. You've since then moved back to St. Louis, but before you moved back, you did a brief stint here at one of our corporate giants in Seattle. So was the idea of going back into business for yourself still in the back of your mind, or is that something that you weren't even really thinking about?
You know, I wasn't really thinking about it at the time. So after I sold Search Market Me, I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. And, it was the big cash out. I'm so happy. Everything happened. I'm in my 20s and I sold my first business. This is awesome. I'm going to be a mommy. And to be honest, and this is where I think more entrepreneurs need to be honest with each other, I was bored out of my mind. I am not a stay-at-home mom at all. So this was sanity check number 2 in my life so far. I love my son so much, but that I can't just be a mom. I really need something to be passionate about. And then all of a sudden, an Amazon recruiter called me and asked if I'd be interested in joining their company and help developing a marketing strategy for them for one of their lines of business. And I mean, how can you say no to Amazon? To get an opportunity to see inside the way that this amazing e-commerce player, the way that they operate and be able to help drive their growth, I just couldn't say no. So I really wasn't looking out too far in the future. I was just looking at the immediate opportunity and saying, if I say no and I never worked at a big company ever in my life, I think I'll regret it because it will at least give me the opportunity to know if it isn't a good fit. And I was right. It was not a good fit. I loved my time there, and the people that I met there are absolutely amazing. I still stay in touch with quite a few of them. There are some very, very bright people working there. But the culture wasn't, I mean, at any company. I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm not meant to work at a big company. And I'll just leave it at that. I need to be able to create my own path. So
Right.
we left, and we left because we decided to move back to St. Louis. So if we were still in Seattle, I may still be there because it was a wonderful company and I was doing really fun things there. But we decided to go ahead and pick up and move back to St. Louis. Family, there are a few things personally that happened that made us move that date forward a couple of years, so we could be here to support some family members, and we are very happy that we did.
Okay, so we're running out of time, so I want to get into the traffic PRM piece. Now, how did you come into finding who this partner was and deciding I'm going to go into business with you?
Sure. So my business partner is Brian Poznansky, and he is a seasoned PR executive. He started his career at some of the big PR companies here in St. Louis. Fleischman Hillard is one of them. And then he went to New York and worked in some PR firms there, started a PR agency out in New York, and then, just like me, decided to move home to be by family. And so at that time is when he started Traffic PRM. So it actually has been around for about 3 years, but it started as more of a PR company that had a little bit of digital marketing. And he kept wanting to add more and more online marketing to it, but didn't have the right business partner to be able to help him do that. And so we had a mutual colleague, a person that I did marketing for when I lived here the first time around, that called me and said, "Jenny, I have somebody you have to meet." And it was, I mean, the first time we met, it clicked. Our strengths are so polar opposite, yet so complementary, that it has been just a dream having him as a business partner. So things are, just like with Search Market Me, things are fast and furious. We are adding new clients regularly. We're hiring new people regularly. We have a core team right now of 5 people, and then we have 10 additional people that give us anywhere from like 20 to 30 hours a week. And so it's a pretty decent sized team already, but it's continuing to grow, and I'm really excited about where it will be in a couple of years.
Very cool. Yeah, it's always fun to talk to people that are excited about what they're doing. You can definitely tell that you're excited about this new company. So, but in building the business, building the businesses over the last 5 or so years, how long have you been in business for yourself?
Since I was 13. Does that count? Technically, it should count. Because this is actually my 6th business that I'm an owner of. The other ones are kind of small. So I would say that's like what? 15 years. 15 years I've been an entrepreneur. Maybe 16.
All right. So in all of those years, what have the advantages and disadvantages of being a young female entrepreneur been?
I will say the advantages have been the people that I've met. There are some really, really smart people out there paving their own way. And so being able to meet with them and get to know them on that level has been wonderful.
Do you feel like, and I'm going to stop you here because somebody else has brought up that same point in meeting people. Do you feel like, though, specifically as a young woman, if you were a young man or an older woman, that you wouldn't have the same opportunities to meet these people?
That is a good question. Maybe, I don't know how to answer that because I have never lived life as a young man or as an older woman, so I can't compare how people would treat me or the opportunities that I would or would not get as a result of that. But I will say that it's interesting the way that the business tide is turning, where young female entrepreneurs, people in their 20s, I was in my early 20s when I started my first agency, I was treated with as much respect and legitimacy as if I were in my mid-30s. So that was really interesting to me, because I'm sure I looked like a bright and shiny kid fresh out of college, but people still, cut me some really big checks and treated me with a lot of professionalism. So that was a good experience.
That's interesting that you say that, because Nicole, who's, and I won't say her business, but she joined our web conference last week, and she was bringing up the point that as in her early 20s as a marketing professional, she was kind of like the sparkly person in the room, where she was young and a female, and so that made her stand out and made her different. But now that she's getting into her 30s, she's in her early 30s, she's like 32, I want to say 31, she's not that old, but now she's saying, how is she going to differentiate herself as just a normal businesswoman kind of a thing? So I think that's an interesting thing, that, young versus...
Great. Give me something to worry about, Jen. Great.
It's funny.
Thanks. Now I'm going to stay up at night worrying about this.
Yeah, but
you're right. It is. I've always seen it as a positive to be young and bubbly and full of energy. I know some people feel that people don't take you seriously. I mean, I'm blonde too, so I have all of those things working potentially against me. I've always felt it was for me, though. I am able to go up and talk to anybody and never be shy about it, and that is just what my personality is, and I exude that. And some people may see it as a disadvantage and people don't take you seriously, but I feel I've always been taken serious. I make people take me seriously.
Yeah, I agree. I think it really is kind of, you're the different person in the room, and it does set you apart from people in that way. I think in a positive light as well. So, as far as disadvantages, are there any things that have happened to you over the years that are just like, man, this is dumb?
I will say that, the only thing I can say is having that consistency, because there have been a few times in my business where, just things change in the economy. For example, I had a lot of clients in the healthcare recruiting industry, and then that industry completely tanked in 2008. So that was really interesting. Luckily, I had diversified, but I still felt a little bit of a dump in my income. And so that was one of the first times that I thought, oh, wow, if I was working for a corporation, I wouldn't be feeling this. And then also I'll say that, some days I do feel lazy, and I think, wow, if I were working for a corporation, I could just get up and go to work, and I wouldn't have to worry about, finding my own food for dinner. But then at the end of the day, that's what I love doing. So I'm glad that I'm doing it, but there are those days where you just wonder, would it just be easier to go out and get a job? Which at the end of the day, the answer is no, but there are those times that you still ask yourself that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to you on that point. So on the good days, or even on the bad days, have you had mentors that have walked you through things, that have added support? Maybe it's one-on-one mentorship, or even people that you love reading their books or following them on Twitter. Have there been people that have supported you in building your business?
There have been people, but it changes. So depending on what my need is, I reach out to a different person. So I'm constantly trying to meet new people and develop ongoing relationships. And I try to be really good at keeping those relationships up and always reaching out to them, so I always know what's going on in people's lives. And so a lot of my mentors are kind of impromptu mentors. I know I'm having a problem at something, so I proactively reach out to someone that I know has experience in that area. And I felt that that is more beneficial to me than having just one person leading me, because it allows me to see varied perspectives on whatever problem I'm facing versus one person with one type of experience in one type of industry. So it's a little bit different of a model than most people do with mentorship, but it's worked really well for me so far.
Yeah, I very rarely meet a young woman who has a mentor, like one specific person that is walking her through the process, which is interesting. I don't know if that's by choice for a lot of women, though. So getting into a different topic. So on your blog, and I'll pull it up on the TV behind me. I don't know if you guys can see that. But Jenny at jennydibble.com has a blog, and she mentioned in one of her blog posts that she has very strict rules about family time and business time. So I just want to ask you, what do you do outside of your business time? What does that look like when you're with your family?
It looks like Legos and trucks is what it looks like, and it is absolutely wonderful. So I do have very strict rules. I try as hard as I can to not be on the laptop or have my phone with me all of the time during the hours that my son is awake. So I'm very lucky that he's a good napper. So most of my days, my son goes to preschool for half days until about 1, and I pick him up. He comes home and he naps then until about 3:30. So I'm able to work. And then from the time he wakes up until when he goes back to sleep, the vast majority of days.
We're showing the picture of him. He's the cutest thing ever.
Thanks. He's very, very adorable and a very sweet child. But I don't want him to, whenever he thinks of mommy, to think of me behind a computer screen. You know, and I want to be there and I want to be attentive to him. And that's something that I constantly have to remind myself, because especially now with traffic, we are growing so fast. But I don't want my life to be work. I want my life to be my family, and I want work to be a big portion of that. So I'm constantly trying to make sure that I'm engaged with him whenever he's awake and down on the floor and playing with him, or, you know, out running. I'm trying to sign up for some more races later in the year. And so he loves being pushed in the stroller. He'll sit. We're training for a half marathon. He'll sit for 2.5 hours and be pushed in the stroller. It's awesome. So we're outside if it's nice. Otherwise, we're inside playing. So it's a pretty good life.
Sounds very nice. For us in the Northwest, we're either inside hanging out playing blocks, or we're inside because it's raining.
I'm sorry. I've kind of been putting everything on Twitter to be like, this is why I moved, people.
I know.
Everybody thought I was crazy moving to the Midwest, but it's been in the 80s and sunny every day.
When there's no tornadoes.
I know. Yes, no. But I will have champagne in my tornado room. So if there's ever a tornado, we will be well prepared and we'll be able to celebrate the fact we lived through it.
No, I did not know that you have like big giant rooms that are specifically made for the whole thing in your house.
Yeah.
I guess I kind of envision the Auntie-M, like Wizard of Oz, you run outside and you get in the bunker still.
But don't you remember people doing that in the movies would get sucked up? So you don't want to go outside your house, you'll get sucked up into the tornado.
That's very true.
You'll
be out there with your champagne bottle running out.
Right? You can have the champagne, but not me.
Yeah. So, okay, Jenny, it's been fantastic talking with you. I have one last question. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This question is a big one. So in 5 years from now, where do you see yourself personally, and where do you see yourself as far as your business goes? 5 years.
Well, I'll start with saying professionally. So with Traffic PRM, I am so happy where I am right now. My business partner is amazing. The team we have is absolutely amazing. I feel so engaged every day that I go in there. Our clients are super fun. I'm having a lot of fun engaging with them. So I'd like to see Traffic in 5 years grown up a little bit and continue to expand. We have some really exciting expansion ideas in the work. So hopefully that will all happen probably sooner rather than later at the rate we're going right now. Personally, again, I know this sounds kind of silly, but I really am where I want to be. I've had that whole, sell, and there's my cat. Wants to come say hi. I've had that whole, cash out, life is good, I'm going to go live on a beach situation, and I wasn't happy. So I'm not really looking for a big cash out like many entrepreneurs think that they are when they first get into business. I'm looking for something that makes me engaged and fulfilled and happy every day. And I found it. So hopefully I'm at a place pretty similar to where I am right now. Family happy, I'm happy, and business is going well.
Awesome. Well, it seems like you're very happy doing what you're doing. And again, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. You can find out more about Jenny. We'll have all of her links over at youngfemaleentrepreneurs.com, but her website is also jennydibble.com. And Jenny, one more time, and I actually don't think I asked you this, but where can people find you on Twitter and Facebook too?
Sure. So on Twitter, I am at Jenny Dibble, JENNYDIBBLE is my handle, and same thing on Facebook. You can also find our business. Our business is Traffic, TRAFFIC -PRM, stands for PR and marketing.com. And then twitter.com /traffic PRM with no dashes, and the same thing on Facebook with no dashes. So go like us and follow us. We give lots of great educational advice for small businesses or medium-sized businesses that are looking to grow their online presence through social media, online marketing, or PR. So definitely sign up and we'll keep you informed.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Jenny, and have a great night. And hopefully we'll be able to talk soon again, or have you on the blog, or see you at a Twitter chat. So
Sounds great, Jen. Thanks for having me. Yep, bye.
So you've been watching Young Female Entrepreneurs. The website is youngfemaleentrepreneurs.com. We do weekly live shows every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern, and they're on Facebook at on.fb.me/YFETV or just on the YFETV tab on the Facebook page. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm sorry that we couldn't do the chat too. Wanted to make sure that Jenny's conversation comes in clearly, but like I said, I believe Erin, I should have checked that. Erin from Well in LA will be the profile next week. Until then, have a fantastic week.